Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Today's lecture is about progressing from the man-made system towards the system of Deen. Many members ask us that how the system of Deen will take birth from the man-made system. And today, hopefully, we will go through some of the steps which are involved in going from the man-made systems towards the system of Deen. System of Deen will not take birth suddenly, but it has to go through a certain transitional phases, and hopefully that point will become clear today. The man-made system has its own structure at collective level, and we live in a man-made system, so we know generally how this collective system is. For example, there are different departments like Foreign Office, and there is also Army, Navy, Air Force, and then there are, the system is decentralized. For example, there's a federal system, some systems are centralized. So it's a mix of decentralization and centralization. And we can see different systems operating across the world, but the basic structure remains the same. That is, there are departments dealing with various functioning of the man-made system. And then all the man-made systems of today, they function on the basis of capitalist system. We can look around it because the capitalist system is defined by the reward for the capital, not for the work. And whether this system is communism or socialism or pure capitalist system or based on some kind of dictatorship or is based on democracy, doesn't matter, or is theocratic system, that is, which is the religious dictatorship. Basically, all these systems are capitalist system in which reward is for the money, and people at the top who control this system, they are very much focused on their own self-interest. They do project as if they are the servants of public, but they are not. We can see that particularly happening in the world of 2025. And in these systems, we can see that willingness of public is not required. Though people vote for it, for example, under democracy, but end of the day, people who gain power, they pursue their own desires, their own wishes. And all those are more or less directly, indirectly focused on fulfilling their own desires. And this is important to understand that public is mechanically involved in these systems. The laws are made by man-made system, and human beings who are in that system, within the boundaries of that system, they have to obey it, whether they accept it rationally or not. So that is why in these systems, if somebody goes against the man-made laws, then they are punished. And this punishment could be even locking up people, some kind of fines. And so these systems are imposed mechanically, and willingness of public is not involved in it. In some cases, they do explain when they are making these laws or legislating these laws, but generally these are imposed mechanically from the top. Another important point about this system is that it is based on this assumption that human life ends with death. And this is a very important point, because if people believe or have iman in the hereafter, then their outlook is different. So they think that the life will end with death. That is why the whole basis of this system is to gain materialistic advantages. And mainly it is the economic side of this system. People's physical needs are met through these systems, and these two are not met adequately in every country. And there is a lot of exploitation which takes place under this system. And the values under which this system operates are relative values. And we have gone through this aspect previously as well under the permanent values. For example, some of the relative values which are glaringly obvious in today's system are might is right. Similarly, divide and rule. Then the reward is for the capital, not for the work. The exploitation and manipulation of human desires takes place through media and through other means, so that people are forced inadvertently, unwittingly to follow the line which the government pursues. Those who do not, they are punished or they are sometimes alienated from the society because the propaganda is used against those who stand up against the system. So some of these values we can observe, and we have gone through this list of these relative values, and all of these are applicable to this man-made system because the man-made system keeps changing its laws, its instructions, its guidance, because the new party comes into power and then they start doing those things which suit them. And as a result, these systems always decline with passage of time. And then the other system, which is similar to it, but which has more power, acquired more power in the meantime, while the old system is declining, then this takes over. And as a result, general public, that is the majority, keeps suffering. They are more or less live a life of slavery. Slavery does not mean that I go into the market and I can buy some of the things and make choices. Slavery means that intellectually we are under the subjugation of man-made laws. Because according to the Quran, human beings have no right to control or rule other human beings who also possess the same self. And we know that the Quran has asked us to accept the rule of Allah through the Quran and not accept the rule of man-made system. And over here, the important thing for us to understand is that the system of Deen, which is put forward by the Quran, has no connection with the man-made system. And this is something which we should accept right today, that man-made system, out of the man-made system, Deeni system cannot emerge by making some changes here and there, that is some cosmetic changes within the man-made system, and by implementing some of the clauses of the Quran and think that this has become an Islamic system. It cannot. System of Deen has to completely replace the man-made system because system of Deen is based on permanent values, not on relative values. And we have gone through this aspect in fair amount of detail previously. So this thing we should keep in mind, and if we haven't come to grips with it, we should try to come to grips with it. That the man-made system has to be completely replaced by the system of Deen at some point in the future. And that is where the true freedom of human self lies. Because man-made system doesn't even talk about human self-development, because it says that the life of human beings ends with death. So from there, another point comes before us that all these Muslim countries who call themselves Muslim do not have the system of Deen within their boundaries. And this is clearly visible because all the characteristics of system of Deen are given in the Quran. Because under the system of Deen, it is the rule of Allah accepted, and the constitution of that country will be based on the Quran, pure Quran. Whereas in all these Muslim countries, basically the secularism prevails. And leaving one odd country where there is some kind of theocracy exists, and that theocracy has also been more or less replaced by secularism and some kind of democratic institutions. So we should keep in mind that the system of Deen, as and when it comes, it has to replace the man-made system 100% completely. And under the system of Deen, direct rule of Allah comes into it through Jamaat Momineen at the top. And related to this, we should also keep it in mind, which we have discussed previously as well in the life of the hereafter, that the system of Deen is already established in the next world where Allah's rule will be directly established or has been established in the life of the hereafter. But in this world, Allah has asked us through the Quran that we should accept His system of Deen as revealed in the Quran and then work on it and establish it in some part of the world so that it serves as a model for others. Now, with that premise about the man-made system, I come to the next part of my presentation or talk. The first point is, under the system of Deen, as I said, the rule of Allah will be established. And for this, Momineen have to emerge. And this is important for us to understand on this platform, that without Momineen emerging out of the man-made system by following the Quran and getting education and training under it, simply we cannot even dream of the system of Deen. It is not about making some adjustments within the capitalist system or the man-made system and we think that Deen has been established, because there are certain benefits associated with the system of Deen which we simply cannot get under the man-made system. So the Quran will act as the constitution of that state which will be established in the name of Deen. That means those Jamaat Momineen which has to emerge out of mankind, they will accept the Quran as the constitution of the state far prior to establishing the system. So there is quite a long leading time involved in which this Jamaat becomes immersed within the man-made system and then comes together, unites their hearts, and then works on it. So this is the important part of today's presentation, to understand that how the system of Deen evolves itself from mankind in whatever state they are. And it has to emerge from the man-made system. Doesn't matter what kind of man-made system it is. In any country, it can take birth anywhere or it can take birth across the world. But this is the procedure which is laid down by the Quran. And this is what Tolu Islam is working for. So the aim of Tolu Islam is to apprise people with the system of Deen by those members who have understood the system of Deen. And then those who have come to this system, they are to be educated and trained because they have voluntarily come to it. So another point comes out of it, that it has to be the team of the willing, as they call it, that it is those people who willingly come towards the Quran, who were looking for guidance, they were fed up with the man-made system, and then they came to the Quran and they said, this is a system for us. From this, another point arises that if we are in the man-made system, for example, of today, and if we have not come to the Quran, that means that essentially, in terms of systems, we don't have a choice. We have to live our life under the man-made system, being born in the man-made system, and then die under this system. So if we don't come to the Quran, essentially we do not have any choice at the level of system for each one of us. So it is through the study of the Quran and then getting educated in the system of Deen that another choice appears before us. And this is a fact. Before coming to the Quran, we were not aware of the system of Deen and the details which we have covered, for example, on this platform and which are covered in various books of Tolu Islam. We can see that there is a clear concept of Deen lies within this literature. And this is what Tolu Islam projects across the world. That if you are fed up with the man-made system, then come to the system of Deen. And the Quran links it with acquiring Iman. For example, Quran says, وَمَنْ يَكْفُرْ بِالطَّاغُوتِ وَيُؤْمِنْ بِاللَّهِ, which means all man-made systems are put together and categorized as the systems of Taghut. And Quran says that reject this system of Taghut. Do kufr with it. And then you will be able to understand what Iman is. And then this Iman is explained in verse 177 of Surah Al-Baqarah, where Quran says, by facing east or west, you will not get bir. You will not understand the system of Deen. You will not understand what Iman is. And then it goes through various aspects of the system of Deen that is at a very basic level. So we should go through this verse 177 of Surah Al-Baqarah a number of times to understand the basics, fundamentals of Iman. Now, Quran presents not as a narrative the system of Deen, but it presents before us salient aspects or points of the system of Deen. That is, it projects before us, primarily it says there are only two categories of human beings in the world. Either they are kafir or they are mu'min. And since Momin are the ones who accept Iman themselves, hence before acquiring Iman, all of us used to be in the state of kufr. Kufr is not some bad word, but it is a psychological status of a human being who is not yet exposed to the values of the Quran, and he is not been presented with the choice of Deen yet. So this is how we should view it, and this is how we should explain to others. And then Quran says that once you have accepted Iman, then another choice will appear before us, that is of the system of Deen. And if you accept this premise, this aspect, or would like to work for the system of Deen, then what you should do is to do salih deeds. Now we have gone through this aspect of salih deeds previously, but it is worthwhile that I go over it again very briefly. Salih deeds means doing those acts, taking those actions in our life which bring out our best, which we cannot bring out without the help of the Quran. Salih means those potentials which are kept within us. Each child, Quran tells us that each child comes to this world with certain potentials. Some of those potentials, some of those abilities, human beings bring out by following the man-made system. For example, children of today who have certain opportunities, if they're not terribly poor and deprived, they can acquire some kind of education within the system, and then as a result of that education, they can get some jobs, earn some living, get married, bring some children into the world, and then die. All of this happens within the man-made system, and we can see that people doing across the world. Those who are poor, of course, they cannot avail all the opportunities provided by the man-made system. So Quran tells us that all these abilities are kept within you. But over and above these abilities, there are other abilities as well which you cannot bring out without the help of the Quran. And those are related to the permanent values, divine attributes, and related to pursuing the path of Deen. So this is important for us to understand that in order for us to bring out those potentials which are kept over there and which are linked to the Quranic value system, simply we cannot bring them out unless we come to the Quran. So that means those who have come to this path and acquired Iman should see those potentials coming out through these salih deeds. So if our salih deeds are not bringing out those potentials which help to understand the system of Deen, we should review it and keep reviewing it and keep making an effort and discussing with other members so that we can recognize that those potentials have appeared in our personality, in ourself. And this is something leads to another aspect, which is the concept of self put forward by the Quran. As I said earlier, that human beings, those who think that the life ends with death, they are body focused. They are very much into the physical domain of human life. They think once the body is dead, brain is dead, there is nothing within human being which has the ability to go through the process of death into the next life. The Quran tells us that is a wrong concept of life, that is an animalistic concept of life. So Quran puts forward the concept of nafs, our human self, our human personality, which revolves around our strong sense of identity which does not change with time. And this strong sense of identity is the one which uses our body and human intellect to get things done. And that is why, for example, Quran compares our death with our sleep. So Quran says that every night, literally you go to sleep. And when you go to sleep, you are actually experiencing some kind of death, where consciousness, which we get through our strong sense of identity, which is called I, we, is suspended. And all this dreaming which we experience is the function of our brain, not of our I. So this is how we should view it. And Quran says that this self is the one which keeps this strong sense of identity throughout. That is why we always feel young, even while our brain is getting old. So our thoughts don't age. Thoughts always remain as young as these used to be. And then, of course, we have metacognitive ability, that is thinking about thinking. So we have gone through some of these points previously as well. And the more we concentrate on this, we can understand how human self functions and makes choices and decides in this life. Now, another point which Quran puts forward is that in case we are fed up with the man-made system, that is, we are not happy with the man-made system, and whatever we are doing under the man-made system, we should continue doing that. But at the same time, at an intellectual level or at an ideological level, we should change our outlook to conform with the outlook put forward by the Quran. And over here, Quran helps us by saying that if you want to carry out all those responsibilities which Allah has listed in the Quran and which are related to Him, that is Allah Himself, if you wish to become partner of Allah or companion of Allah, then you should come to the Quran and become that companion. And for that, Quran puts forward in one verse saying, Allahu waliyul lazina amanu yukhrijuhum minal zulumati ilan nur. That Allah is the companion, wali of those who accept Iman. That is, they have rejected the system of Taghut and then accepted Iman as per the procedure laid down in the Quran. And once they have done that, then they will be able to recognize the darknesses which are existing within the man-made system. And we can see these darknesses everywhere. For example, there are conflicts, there are imbalances, there is a slavery, there is poverty, there is the creation of Yateem and Miskeen across the world. There are conflicts everywhere. There is a continuous creation of fear and huzn in every direction, in every land. And in every land today on the planet Earth, there are man-made laws which are controlling human beings, and all these laws keep changing. And because people, those who are in position of power, who acquire wealth somehow, they then subjugate other human beings who are equal like them to their own laws. And then these laws keep changing with the passage of time and according to their desires. That is why we can see so many amendments taking place in different constitutions of the world. So there is no permanence in this. So that is why Quran says that if you come to the permanent values, you come to the system of Deen, stability will come in your life and balance will come to your life. You will know that you as a human being, as equal human being, will be consistently subjected to the same permanent values from birth to death on this planet. And now next point is that all these Momineen who come together, why do they come together? And this is another very important point in this connection, that how the system progresses forward from the man-made system towards the system of Deen. Quran tells us that once you reject the man-made system, that is the system of Taghut, and then you have accepted Iman, then it says, for example, Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 256, that once you have come to the Quran, then essentially what you have done is fakadistam sakabil urwatil wuskal anfisama laha, that you are now held on to that support which is never going to break. Now, in order to understand this aspect, it says that it may not be visible to you initially, but once you have started following this new system, that is the constitution, at an intellectual level, then gradually you will see that a desire becomes created within you through this Iman, where you look for other people who have also accepted Iman. And that is where then your hearts start coalescing, because at an intellectual level and emotional level, you have now moved away from the man-made system and you have started thinking about the system of Deen. The system of Deen has not yet taken birth anywhere in the world, but conceptually you have moved away from the man-made system towards the system of Deen. And at this stage, then Quran declares or says, وَتَعْصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا, that you should hold on to the rope of Allah, that is the Quran, the revelation, and then don't be divided, which means that at a basic level, human beings have plenty of dissensions and differences taking birth within their own psyche. And that is why we see sectarian Islam. There are a lot of sects. Similarly, in other religions as well, there are a lot of sects. And then there is a party system across the world in every country. And all these parties continuously have tussles with each other. So if human beings stay in a state of tussle all their life, in a state of conflict, nothing positive can take place in the world, individually as well as collectively. Of course, these human beings who are rich and powerful can solve their economic problems in this life, but ultimately they will not be able to get that self to which the Quran is pointing our attention, and then they die. So they virtually live life at an animalistic level, carry out certain customs and rituals, and that doesn't matter. But according to the Quran, since they have not acquired a developed self, hence there is no life for them in the hereafter. Now, this point, once we become Momin and come together, this gradually becomes evidently clear to us at self's level what it means. Because the change which takes place within our psyche after becoming Momin, that gradually becomes evidence of the big transformation which has taken place within our own psyche. And Quran puts a lot of emphasis on the transformation of our psyche. That is why it says, Inna Allaha la yugayyiru ma biqawmin hatta yugayyiru ma bi anfusihim, that no nation's outer condition can change unless they change what is within their own psyche. So Quran says, bring a change within your nafs, because the world of nafs exists. It is a fact. All of us exist. And all of us know that each one of us exists. So we have that strong sense of identity which tells us that we are alive and we have a certain value. So whole system of Deen is predicated on this requirement that the Jamaat Momineen must emerge willingly through their own free volition without any ikrah, and then start working together towards the system of Deen. And this is what precisely is the purpose of Tolu Islam. That once we have understood the system of Deen, we should come together, strengthen ourselves using the platform of Tolu Islam. So from this perspective, we see that Tolu Islam is the need of each one of those who want to become Momin and then work towards the system of Deen. So in that way, I will say that all these people are fortunate that there exists already an organization which has all wherewithal, all that is required for establishing the system of Deen. And if we wish to make use of that by moving away from the man-made system, then it is already there in a ready-made form, because it has all that literature which has been put together over a fairly long period of time by a scholar called Pervez. So it is not about some individual, it is about the system of Deen. So the decision which each one of us have to make at some point in time is that if I'm not satisfied with the man-made system, then I now have a choice of the system of Deen. So this is where then the concept of Deen materializes once we come to the Quran, come together and start analyzing the details of the system. And this is what precisely we are doing on this platform. Now, important thing over here is that Quran has not laid down any particular structure for acquiring power in the land. What it has said in verse, for example, 55 of Surah Nur, that Allah has promised to those who have accepted Iman and do saleh deeds, He will establish them in the earth and give them power. And if we read that verse completely, we will see that at one stage it says, then as a result of this power, their state of fear will convert into state of peace. Now, over here in this verse, for example, there is no emphasis on numbers. So numbers, according to the Quran, do not matter, because Quran says that the majority in any case will not come to the Quran until such time that the system is established and Deen is established, then people will come towards this system after seeing the benefits of it, after becoming fed up with the man-made system. So that means all those who are pioneers on this path, what they should do is they should come together, unite their hearts, and keep working on this. So over here, Quran is not saying that after so many years, then the system will become established. It doesn't say that it will come through democracy. In any case, it cannot come through democracy, because democracy is just the method or the procedure of electing certain people for the government. And if the majority is unguided, if the majority is non-Quranic, they can never ever be able to elect someone who is Quranic, because they don't like the Quran in majority. So this is the point we should keep in mind, that from the majority, the system of Deen simply cannot emerge. System of Deen has to emerge by following the process and procedure given by the Quran. And the procedure given by the Quran is that individuals should first move away intellectually from the man-made system. That is, they should do the kufr of the system of Taghut, then accept Iman, and then come together and gradually unite their hearts and form a Jamaat. And then the duty of this Jamaat, or responsibility of this Jamaat, is to keep staying together and go through the Quran from beginning to the end as a system. Study it, understand it, absorb it, and at the same time do a lot of solid deeds to bring out their best, that is, their potentials, which are kept within their cognition, and bring them out, which they simply cannot bring out under the man-made system. So this is how we should view it from here onwards. We have gone over it previously as well, but today we will try to look at the crystallized form of it, so that we know that what exactly we have to keep doing for rest of our life. So over here, Quran is also drawing our attention to it, that how quickly this system of Deen becomes established through your efforts is not your headache. It is not your problem. Your issue is that once you have rejected the man-made system and come to the Quran, then stick to this path, because all those paths which you followed previously under the man-made system, you got fed up with that, and then you left it and came to Sirat-e-Mustaqim, the path which is established and well defined by the Quran. And that is why this is where that verse, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ, comes into our mind. That over there, Quran says that all these potentials to follow Sirat-e-Mustaqim are kept within you. And you also have equal potentials of doing evil as well as good. And that is why then the next part says, ثُمَّ رَدَدْنَاهُ أَسْفَلَ سَافِلِينَ, that do not follow that path which is pursued by those who establish the man-made systems. And this is where we have to develop that concreteness, that patience, that steadfastness within us using the Quran. And obviously we cannot do it alone. It has to be a joint effort, because then one can guide each other. And then this leads to another aspect of the Quran, where it says that you should come together and then make decisions through mutual consultation. It is not the task of one man to run this system. In fact, we can see in the word, normally every man-made system is headed by one person, but they all have their cabinets, they all have their cohorts who come together and make decisions. Because human beings need each other to look at various aspects of whatever decision making they do. So under the system of Deen, once this Jamaat is formed at the top and they come together, then they have to consult the Quran as the constitution of the system of Deen. So above them is Allah, whose book is being followed, and that means they have taken over those responsibilities which are clearly listed within the Quran, and these people then accept Allah's rule in that piece of land wherever the power comes in their direction. So at this stage, the issue is to understand the system of Deen as laid down in the Quran and its various finer aspects, and make them understand and accept willingly and not to get distracted. So this point becomes clear from this that the system of Deen takes birth from the man-made system. So this aspect is clear. It is not going to be imposed from somewhere. There is not going to be any miracle taking place in the world that suddenly whole world disappears and Momineen are left behind and they start ruling on behalf of Allah the word which comes in their direction. It is not going to happen like that, and that is not how Quran explains the system of Deen in the Quran. All the messengers which are noted in the Quran are human beings who were born in the man-made system, lived their life in the man-made system, passed on the message within the man-made system, and then all those Momineen who came together, created a Jamaat Momineen, and then they were established in the land. So there is no particular set procedure given in that. There is one procedure given, for example, through Bani Israel, which is explained well in detail. And another procedure is by the last messenger of Allah, where initially in 13 years he passed on the message, and those who came to the message, then he arranged their education, training, and self-development, and the next 10 years, gradually, the power came in their direction and they were able to establish the system. Then this system continued for some time, and then people again became lax. They gave it up. They started following their own desires. The system became contaminated. They left the Quran as the constitution of that system. And as a result, the state of, for example, these Muslims is not very dissimilar to that of the secular systems in the world. So this is how it is. There is nothing special about it. The procedure is laid down in the Quran, and we have to make a decision that how strongly we reject the man-made system and ideologically accept the constitution of the Quran. Now, another aspect which I've noted over here is that as and when this system comes into shape, it should move at a very high speed, because it has to go at a far higher accelerated speed than the man-made system. And the first stage of this system will be to rationally explain to everyone around. Because human beings who have been living under the man-made system and their minds are contaminated by the ideology of the man-made system, they will have to accept the change which is taking place in the land. And of course, this has to be explained rationally, because this is a non-mechanistic system. The system of Deen is predicated on this aspect, on this assumption that people, most of the people in the land, should accept it rationally. So obedience over here will be accepted rationally, not mechanically, not by force. So all those who establish this system and power comes in their direction, they have to understand it before establishing that system. Any desire to control other human beings should come under the divine attributes of Aziz and Hakim. So this is the aspect on which we should concentrate and understand and create that willingness within us. And of course, we can individually practice it right now before the system is established within the sphere in which we are working. For example, within the families, within the businesses, within the jobs we are doing. So all this has to be practiced now, so that as and when power comes in a direction, we are ready for that. And this system is very decentralized. And initially it might be centralized, but decentralization means that people have to be trained and then they spread out in the land and help others. And under Tolu Islam, for example, we have different teams called bosoms, and they are the ones, then they can take lead in that respect. That means wherever people have come to the Quran, they need to look at it from that respect. It is not merely going through some of the lectures and some of the books and then keeping things to ourselves. We have to understand it and then rationally explain to others. Even if people don't listen, when we rationally explain to others, it strengthens our own iman. It strengthens our own personality, our own conviction on this path. Now, once the system is established, let's assume that in some small piece of land in the world, on this planet, this system is established, then the first phase will be that in that, of course, we have to rationally explain to everyone. The system has to be very transparent. It must have a lot of patience, and people should know what are the permanent values, and those permanent values should be listed across the land so that everyone knows. Because through these permanent values, then people will know that what exactly they should expect from the system. That is one thing. Then the system is based on some of the very fundamental points. First is that it is based on the concept of Allah, which is given in the Quran. Then it is based on the concept of the hereafter as given in the Quran. Then it is based on the concept of the law of requital as functioning in the human world at psychological level, so that everyone knows that they are accountable for what they do. And emphasis has to be continuously placed on that, because through the concept of Allah, people will be explained what is their own concept of human self. So they recognize their own strong sense of identity, and they also recognize that they have metacognitive abilities and how their thoughts work, how their mind is generating different ideas and thoughts, and how they should transform that thinking into the thinking of the Quran. And this is a very slow process, but it can work gradually over a fairly shorter period of time. And this has to be done fairly quickly. And those who are implementing and helping others to develop it, they have to be educated and trained in that. So there is a lot of work required before entering this system. And once the system is established, then there is a lot of work required at a very high speed. And we have seen it in this world. For example, China believes in the economic uplift of their own people. And what they have done is that they have carried out all economic development in the shortest possible time which human beings can do. And within a span of about 2 to 3 decades, they have gone far ahead. And speed is essential in anything we do under the system of Deen, whether it is a speed to understand the system of Deen and the speed we need to transform the society. In a system of Deen, there is no idleness, there is no laziness. Each human being who's got 2 arms, 2 legs, and a fairly functioning brain must give their best, because that is essential for our self-development. There is no question of just sitting home and doing nothing and keep talking about everything and complaining about everything. So that is how the system will be conceived, and that is how we should be thinking on these lines right now before the power comes in the direction of Tolu Islam, for example. So as I said, essential aspects of the system of Deen is the change in ideology, in our outlook, in our belief system, which is based on Iman. And what happens by accepting the concept of Allah, concept of the hereafter, concept of law of mukafat, and other permanent values, what change it brings within our psyche? It brings calmness within the domain of functioning of our desires. If we see under the man-made system, because they think that the life will end with death, so whole emphasis is on material success. That is why if we ask anyone what is the definition of their success, we will say it revolves around the material successes. Whereas under the system of Deen, hereafter, concept of Allah, law of mukafat, and other permanent values will provide the focus. And as a result, human beings will understand that the life does not end with death. Life at a self's level will go beyond death. And as the self develops, as I said earlier, it becomes evidence in itself that this self is not going to die, which I have acquired under the system of Deen. That means Jamaat Momineen, in whose direction the power comes, they will have developed this conviction within their own self through their own efforts that their life is not going to end with death. It will continue beyond death. And this becomes an evidence in itself that their path is Sirat Mustaqim. So, with this higher ideology, human beings then start working on this and bring out all those potentials which were lying latent within their psyche while they were under the man-made system. So this point we should be very much convinced of, that once we follow this path, that is the constitution of the Quran put forward by Allah, the changes which take place within our psyche, those become an evidence of their own success. So unless we experience that, we simply cannot be of any use to the system of Deen. And this is not possible without following the Quran's basic instruction of coming together and not be divided. And this is the stage where each individual among this Jamaat Momineen makes a commitment to Allah that they have sold their life and possessions to this system of Deen. Because now it becomes an evidence before their own minds and hearts. Under this system, another important point is that there will be transparency. Because if there is no transparency and people are not briefed and they are doing things mechanically, then doubts and suspicions arise, uncertainty arise. People start doubting others that what this system is doing towards them. If they are kept informed all the time, that means using all the social media and means of communication to keep people informed, so that they understand that this system is 100% working for their benefit in their direction. The standard of living at the top of Jamaat Momineen is exactly similar to the common man in the street, because their outlook has changed. Now they are looking at the hereafter, they are looking at their self, and they are seeing the life beyond the present time. They are looking into the future all the time, that how this system is evolving over a period of time. They do not waste time. They do not waste any efforts. And they optimize every aspect of their efforts and pass it on to the younger generation as well, so that they can take over in due course of time. Now, I come towards the end of this presentation, and in that I will say a few things. First is that the existing system of mass will be utilized for education and training. If we look at the existing system, that is the man-made system, we will see that a lot of resources are lying vacant at night. Under the system of Deen, it is a system which functions 24/7, because it is a system which is established on behalf of Hayyul Qayyum, that is Allah Himself. And we know that Quran has said that Allah does not go to sleep and He never dozes. He is all the time present. Huwa ma'akum aina ma kuntum. So this system also works 24/7, which means there have to be shifts of, for example, each human being needs some kind of a sleep, for example, of 8 hours. And they will be working, but at the same time, there will be others who will be taking their place. So that is how the system will be organized. Of course, it will have some kind of breaks as well. There will be some kind of work-life balance kept in that as well. But overall, the system will be established in a way so that it moves forward, far away from those beliefs of success which are under the man-made system. So Deen will replace all those wrong concepts which prevail in today's world under the man-made systems. And I will not go into the details of that, but we can figure out ourselves, and hopefully in our subsequent lectures, while we are going through the Quran, these things will become clearer and clearer with the passage of time. And over here, I have quoted one example. I will quote one example, that if we want to become a doctor, dentist, or some professional degree we want to achieve within the man-made system, we simply cannot become doctor, dentist, lawyer, and anything else unless we have gone through a procedure, and we have gone through the procedure of education and training. And the same procedure the Quran has put forward before us. The only thing is, at present, we don't have a proper academic institution where Jamaat of Momineen can be prepared, can be educated and trained. And for that, we are using, for example, this system of Zoom, that where we come together and as initial seeds, as pioneers of this system, since we are interested in the system of Deen and we are moved away from the man-made system, so we have come together and offering our own service to the system of Deen to become Momineen and then come together and then ideologically accept the concept of Deen put forward by the Quran. So there is a lot we have to do at our own, in our own time and using our own resources. And this is where all the literature and lectures which are available to us, we should go through them repeatedly. It is not a question of understanding thing once. If we go through a verse, as I said, verse 177 of Surah Al-Baqarah, we should go through it number of times. There are a number of other verses, we need to go through them and keep them in mind all the time as we go through our life. Because we should remember that each passing week is reducing our time of staying on this planet. That means we are going towards our demise from this planet Earth. And if we remain part of these efforts which we are making towards the system of Deen, that means even if the system is not established during our lifetime, we can gradually be assured that once we die, we will enter the system of Deen, which is already established in the hereafter. And this is another important point over which we have gone through previously as well, and we should go through it again and again to keep reminding ourselves that in this world, Allah has asked us to establish the system of Deen, following the procedure given in the Quran, to accept the rule of Allah. And in the next life, the rule of Allah is already directly established by Allah Himself. So even if we do not get power in the land while we are making efforts towards that and leave this world, we will be entering into the system of Deen after death. And those who are left behind, if they are well established, then during their lifetime, hopefully, if sufficient efforts are still being made and in a sustained way, then the system will be established at some point in time. So the Quran says that it is possible to establish this system within the finite lifetime of one human being. And for that, it presents, for example, the model of the messenger Yusuf, where he managed to establish this system within his lifetime by following this path. And if we look at the life of the messenger, the final messenger of Allah as well, we can see, as it is reported historically, that within a short span of 23 years, the system did become established. So this system for establishment is possible within the finite lifespan of human beings on this planet Earth. Now, next is that the system of Salat and Zakat is very much part of it. So once the system is established, then it will start moving towards that gradually. Similarly, promoting good and forbidding evil, stopping, for example, lawlessness, jobs will be created. Of course, jobs is the responsibility of the government, because whoever is born and exists in a system, it is the failure of the system not to keep them engaged. Because they have 2 arms, 2 legs, they have a body to feed, they must be provided job. It is good for their own self-respect and dignity, and this is covered under Laqad Karamna Bani Adama. Similarly, education, similarly, for example, traffic, their permanent values and working out their subclasses. So few words about these working out of subclasses. For example, these subclasses will be figured out under each permanent value through mutual consultation. For example, Quran says, Laqad karamna bani Adama. We will have to figure it out how to provide maximum respect and dignity to each individual. So that means under this system, if somebody has committed a crime, no swearing, no bad mouthing will be done, no human being will be humiliated. Similarly, no physical punishment to any human being. The system will be so strong and tolerant that people, firstly, will not commit crimes. And those who commit crimes, there will be some kind of reformative process in place to provide them opportunity to become better human beings. And we have to explain to them that the pleasure of committing crime is far, far less than coming to the path of reformation and righteousness. The pleasure associated with righteousness is far, far higher than meeting the base desires of our physical needs and physical attractions. So these are psychological aspects on which this system will function, and all finer aspects will be brought out in the light of the Quran. Similarly, for example, at the human self level, there will be sub-clauses figured out that how to help people to recognize, for example, their own personalities and human self, and then how to get best out of it. For example, all the potentials which are kept within human beings and which can be brought out under permanent values and through divine attributes will be explained through these sub-clauses. Next is also, for example, promoting good and forbidding evil. The whole system will have to be, sub-clauses will be worked out. Similarly, the law of mukafat or law of requital, sub-clauses will be worked out, how to help people to use their own accountability to elevate their own self's development and its loftiness. Then riba and banking, initially the same banking will stay, and then gradually the banking will be transformed where we will get rid of all inflation, and as a result, the income and expenses will be balanced. So that means the riba will be eliminated. Research and development will be carried out, particularly in those psychological areas where Iman and Salih deeds improve our psyche. Presently, in the man-made system, we can see so much depression and hopelessness existing across the world. And this is primarily because of not following the Quranic values. We simply cannot avoid the consequences of not following the Quranic values. If we do not follow the Quranic values, whether we like it or not, these affect our minds. Because all those potentials which are kept within us and which exist within our subconscious and unconscious, they keep bothering us. They keep telling us, do something about it, but we do not realize it, and we keep pursuing our own desires, the base desires created by the man-made system. So by following the wrong path, we can never ever get right results. And this is what Quran tells us, that if you follow Sirat al-Mustaqim, so all the pleasures, happiness, joys associated with that path will become apparent to you, will become obvious to you, will appear before you, just like the sunlight. So this is something we should take away from today's presentation. And balance in the general life, very important. Second is cleanliness and waste disposal will be carried out. It is not that one country will dump their waste in another poor country, which is happening at present. The whole world will be under one value system. And of course, gradually this will help by establishing the system as a model in some small piece of land. Population planning will be extremely important. Presently, human beings are arriving in this world right and left without much planning. And this is wrong. If a human being is coming to this life with choice and intent, it is our duty under the Quran that we present a better world for these children of Adam. There's no point in bringing these children into this life for whom the world is a place of disgrace, absence of dignity, and humiliation. And we can see that this system is creating Yateem and Miskeen, that is orphans and destitutes. And it is unfair these children to be brought into this world under these circumstances. So it is the duty of those who have come to the Quran to make 100% efforts towards establishing the system of Deen. And another important point which we have gone through in one of the permanent values is to bringing forward best people. See how Quran is taking away all the pleasures associated with materialistic living. It is essentially asking us to come out of the animalistic like living and become a Jamaat Momineen so that you unite your hearts and you leave behind these biological relationships in which you were born and you had no control. And if we look at the system of Deen, we should try to use our power of imagination and using the Quranic value system and try to imagine how beautiful and joyful will be this system of Deen somewhere in the future. And as they say, that if we can imagine it, we can do it. And with that, I come to the end of this presentation. Thank you very much for listening.